Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given a big interview to Money Control, a very, very detailed interview, his first big digital interview before the G20 summit. What does the Prime Minister say? I would basically split it into 5 parts. The Prime Minister, obviously the big headline from the interview is that India's growth is good for the world. PM playing a very, very strong case for India's growth trajectory, how India will become the third largest economy in the world, the roadmap towards the same, but also stressing that India's growth is not just good for Indians, it is also good for the world. India matters on the global stage, and also the Prime Minister speaking in a big way about the India's role in a world which is driven by geopolitical uncertainties because of the Russia-Ukraine war, the need for global credible institutions like the WTO, like the United Nations, and the dangers from financially irresponsible policies like the freebies which are being offered by political parties in India. The Prime Minister interview basically split, I think, major 5 issues. India and the G20, how India's G20 presidency has been one which has been truly democratic, events held in over 60 cities, over 220 events. The G20 event was taken out of the traditional like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and taken even to tier 2 cities, even in fact every state capital to UTs, and how it became truly a symbol of India's diversity. PM also speaking about the global south, how India has become the shoulder for the global south and how India has become the voice on the global stage for the global south. In fact, India has been stressing in a big way for the inclusion of the African Union also into the G20. When the European Union can be there, why can't the African Union also be there? And PM laying a strong case for the developing nations of the African Union and other developing nations of global south to find a space and a voice in the G20 structure. PM also speaking a lot about the digital public infrastructure of India, how India has achieved new records in digital public infrastructure. Just now we saw last month how UPI has reached a global high, a historic high of nearly 10 billion UPI transactions in a month. That also the Prime Minister has spoken about. PM has also spoken about reining in inflation, how inflation has become a major issue in the world. Global inflation has at highest levels due to after the COVID pandemic and also due to the Russia-Ukraine war. But India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying to Money Control that how his government has helped rein in inflation. In fact, he even mentioned to the recent promise made and the decision taken on Raksha Bandhan, where the price of LPG cylinders has been brought down by rupees 200 for all consumers. The PM also speaking about the roadmap to the third largest economy, saying it's a matter of great pride that India has risen now to the 5th largest economy in the world, and what will be the roadmap for India going ahead to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. Let's first speak about the role the PM spoken about India and G20, when he says that it is important for me to speak a little bit about the backdrop in which India became the president of the G20. There was a pandemic followed by a conflict situation. It posed a lot of questions to the world. It had pushed the world into an era of uncertainty and instability. How India has played a role in its G20 presidency to find a solution to these issues. The PM shows it's well known that the approach of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas and Sabka Prayas in the country, a model that his government has followed in the last 9 years. This, he says, is the guiding principle for global relations as well going ahead. Very important word by the Prime Minister when he says that India's model of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas has been acknowledged and adopted globally. He also says that the G20 presidency of India is the people's presidency, how people have taken the lead in this. He has said that how we have seen earlier that in historical circles of power, there was a certain reluctance to go beyond Delhi and even Vigyan Bhavan for that example. But he said not just the G20, earlier also, since he has come to power, the visits of foreign leaders, various other international summits have been held outside Delhi. Foreign leaders have been taken to places like Varanasi, to Shanti Niketan. Various examples he has cited, like the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. The PMCC was hosted in Bangalore. French President Emmanuel Macron and then Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited Varanasi. A number of examples that the PM has cited about how the G20 became a totally people's event and also how it was a democratized kind of an event, this time India's G20 presidency. Speaking about the global south, he says that after many decades of instability in 2014, the people of India voted for a stable government that had a clear agenda for development. Very important word by the Prime Minister. He putting forward a case that how stable governments, when elected with decisive mandates, lead to deep structural reforms as his government has done in the last 9 years. PM saying in 2014 he came to power on the basis of promises he made to people, but in 2019 he got even a bigger mandate because of the performance his government showed, as well as the future roadmap that his government had laid out. And this, because of this huge mandate, a strong, stable government, that deep structural reforms could be carried out, which is contributing to India's growth and reining in inflation, but at a time the world is struggling with the issue of inflation. He also says that when it comes to global south, these are countries with which India empathizes. PM says that since we are also a part of the developing world, we understand the aspirations of the global south. At every forum, including the G20, the Prime Minister says India has been raising the concerns of the countries of the global south. In fact, countries of the global south have also found a space in India's G20 presidency, the Prime Minister says. In other words, in other important things which I think the Prime Minister has said, PM speaking a lot about India's focus on clean and renewable energy, India achieving its climate targets way ahead of time compared to the developed countries. PM speaking also about that in the Paris meeting, when he said that India would ensure that 40% of energy would come from non-fossil fuel schemes sources by 2030. We achieved this in 2021 itself, 9 years ahead of the promise we had made in Paris. So I think the Prime Minister is stressing a lot on that, and also saying that India is increasing its capacity of renewables. The installed capacity of solar energy has already gone up 20-fold, PM said, and we are now among the top 4 countries when it comes to wind energy. A very important point being, I think, made by the PM on the issue of climate change. Also, PM speaking about the interconnectedness of the world, how geopolitics can have a significant impact on decision making. He has said that countries need to offer stable policies that encourage trade, industry and innovation. During the India's G20 presidency, India is playing a significant role in strengthening the multilateral trading system and providing rules-based global trade. Very important statements again coming from the Prime Minister. I think other points that I would like to highlight, what the Prime Minister has said is also how India's G20 presidency has played a great emphasis on addressing the global challenges posed by the debt crisis in low-income and middle-income countries. In fact, he has said that this is something all countries should take care of. And in that load, also speaking about how in our country too, in India too, on multiple platforms, the PM has spoken about the need to be alert against financially irresponsible policies. I think the Prime Minister is stressing here on the freebie culture in the country, especially the Congress party offering these freebies in states like Himachal Pradesh, Karnataka, and now in the next poll-bound states of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh. The Prime Minister is saying that the long-term implication of such policies of freebies destroy not only the economy but also the society. It is the poor which in fact pay a hefty price for these freebies in the long run. He said yet again, the good thing is that people are now increasingly becoming aware of this problem, that freebies is not the way to go, and in the long term of the economy, what is important is empowerment of the people and not the freebie culture. PM also speaking a lot about the UPI, Aadhaar, and how India is globally known for its tech talent, how due to the Jan Dhan Aadhaar JAM Trinity, even the poorest and the most vulnerable of people know that their rights cannot be snatched away. The benefits of the government are directly reaching into their bank accounts. The Prime Minister speaking about it. He spoke about how foreign delegates, when they visit India, they're surprised how you can scan QR codes and make digital payments. He has mentioned that also. And he has said that India has accounted for almost half of the real-time digital transactions happening in the world. And in fact, he says the world wants to associate with India to learn and adopt the UPI. The PM also speaking about the inflation being a key issue, as I spoke about earlier, how the pandemic and conflict changed the global inflation dynamics. But he says that as far as India is concerned, we have taken a number of steps to control inflation. Even in the face of adversities and global dynamics, India's inflation, the Prime Minister says, was 2 percentage points lower than the global average inflation rate of 2022. And he says that his government continues to make pro-people decisions to boost the ease of living, referring to the recent decision on Raksha Bandhan to reduce the price of LPG cylinders by Rs 200 for all consumers. The roadmap to the 5th largest economy, of course, one of the favorite topics of the Prime Minister, on how India is going to become the 3rd largest economy in the world, something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes immense pride in. The roadmap of the same, he is saying that it is a privilege and honor for us that people have placed their unprecedented trust in him. They gave him 2 full mandates in 2014 and 2019. And very important, I think the highlight of this interview for me is this line, that due to this political stability, every sector could see deep structural reforms. The Prime Minister speaking about how foreign direct investment in India has broken records year after year, how export records have been broken in services, goods, and how India has taken this great success across sectors. And this line especially, I would also say it must be specially noted that women are emerging as the driving force of our growth journey. PM crediting the women leadership of this country on how it has propelled the growth journey of India. And this is something that he says that every sector that is on an upswing is seeing women take the lead. Very, very important interview by the Prime Minister to Money Control. His first digital interview, speaking on a range of topics, I think sets the tone for the upcoming G20 Leaders Summit this week and the battle of 2024.